Catchup podcast. It's me, Ben, joined as always by Chris Pow. Chris, how are we doing?
Yeah, good. I know people will be questioning why the fuck I've got a beanie and a jacket on, but I've just been outside and it's bloody freezing, so I've just got the heating on. So I might have to look like this for an hour or whatever, however long this podcast takes, Ben.
Oh, I just thought you were in for climbing mountains or something. Like you were been on a hike or something. Fair play. Obviously, we went around last week on the official catch-up. Just different circumstances transpired into not having much of a podcast. We do notice, I think, a bit of a drop-off when we talk about different sort of cup competitions rather than the league competition stuff. So it was probably not a lot to be missed, I think. Although we do seem to have plenty to talk about from the last fortnight. We'll start off with the Lowland League, as we always do. We'll look at the results. There was a mixed bag of results across the board in the Lowland League. Quite a few surprises, I would say, certainly from our perspective. And we'll start off with the first game then. Berwick Rangers won, Civil Service Strollers won. A decent point for Berwick, given how kind of stop-start in the middle they have been, and Civil have been climbing the table and going about their business quite quietly. But a decent point, I would say, for Berwick, given where they're at just now, Chris.
Yeah, Liam Buchanan's been on a goal-scoring form for Berwick. I had a wee bit of sticks. I never put him in the team of the month, but obviously I think a lot of the time it's based on form of the team as well. He is scoring a fair bit of goals, and well deserved for Liam, because it's always been a criticism of Berwick. Maybe they don't score enough, certainly, but he's been on fire for them. Strollers, we've not really spoken about Strollers, just for one reason or another. We've often avoided them, or they've been playing on the day we've been doing the podcast. I think they were playing Stirling Uni a few weeks ago when we were discussing. But they're doing fantastic, obviously under Gary Jardine. There's no real surprise. It's obviously whether they can sort of keep at it. But yeah, I mean, they've only been defeated 2 times this season. They've not been defeated since early August, which is fantastic for Strollers. I feel they do have a solid team. Obviously, Gary's experienced enough in this league that he knows what he's doing. But yeah, decent draw in my opinion for Berwick. I think I did say when they played Rangers B, I think they got defeated like 3-0, if I remember correctly, but they did seem to play a wee bit better. But I was reading Malk's, I think he's been really frustrated with things recently. I read an article from Berwick basically saying it's frustrating how things are going, and certainly I would agree in the sense that, I mean, I picked Berwick as my dark horses at the start of the season, and they're certainly not performed up to that. But yeah, a decent draw in terms of a Strollers team that's really heavily on form, and a really good Strollers team that I rate. Obviously, guys like Innes Lawson and Ross Young were in the team of the month. Ewan Valentine, Big Alufe always seems to be in amongst the goals. So yeah, Strollers have a team there. It's whether they can sort of keep at it would be my I wouldn't even say concern, but what I'm thinking about further. If they can keep there and maintain that, anything can happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we'll talk about where we were at with the league table probably later on in the episode, given we're probably halfway through the season. But I think the thing I always think about Civil Service Strollers just now is they seem to be going about their business quite quietly, and that's probably quite good for them, and a bit inconspicuous and maybe a wee bit underrated by some teams. And that, as you mentioned, they've got some great players, and they've always seem to be getting the results that they need, and they're going to climb the table up to third now in the table, only a few points behind Rangers B, which obviously we've talked about Rangers B to death in this podcast, and we'll cover them also later on as well. But I mean, there's no reason why Civil can't be right up there for the rest of the season. They're going to be a decent side, and they're a team that do well in cup competitions generally too as well. So they've got plenty to play for when it comes to Civil. Next game then, I was just sitting there working at how many goals we had over the course of the Lowland League this weekend. 36 goals across 8 games, and one of those games that was quite high scoring was Bowness United 7, Dalbeattie Star 0. Sore one for Dalbeattie, given we'd hoped they can maybe had a bit of a fortune turnaround and got a couple of results, and also had some difficult results in the cup competitions, but we'd hoped they'd turned it around. But back to square one, I think, in terms of a pretty tough afternoon against Bo'ness. Bo'ness obviously coming away from a game against Auchinleck Talbot a couple of weeks back where they get knocked out of the Scottish Cup in penalties, which is again a decent result because we know Auchinleck are a decent team, but to go and put 7 past Dalbeattie, probably didn't expect that, even though Dalbeattie have been kind of quite poor, but superb from Bo'ness.
I don't know if we can call it curse of the commentator on a podcast, but a lot of the stuff we said, a few weeks ago, I don't think applies now because we did say obviously Bo'ness fell off a wee bit after a great start, but they seem to be, coming back up, creeping back up the table, and fair play, they're a really good side. I mean, it's a tough one for Dalbeattie. They're obviously still struggling, still a lot of gelling to do with the new manager obviously coming in. So. But yeah, to put 7 past any team in a league match is really good. Fair play to Bo'ness. I'm actually intrigued to see, I suppose, with every other team, how they'll continue. That's the thing. I mean, a lot of the things we've said, it's midway through. There's a lot of games to be played. We'll see come the end of the season, Ben, what happens.
Yeah, that's it. I think, personally speaking, Bo'ness probably going to be one of these sides in the middle, not going to challenge, not going to get relegated. But by all means, a good result. And if they can get some results on the board, then who knows? But I just don't see it personally, and it'll be a watch. But I think when it comes to Dalbeattie, we obviously know they're at the bottom, they're toiling, and they're trying to find some sort of fortune to turn them around. We thought that maybe had happened a couple of weeks back when they got the first result, but they're probably looking at Edinburgh Uni and saying if we can catch them, then that's all we can really do here. There's not going to be much more for Dalbeattie's case to really climb the table now. I think Edinburgh Uni are struggling big time at the bottom. You're kind of looking at East Stirlingshire as well, maybe kind of they're looking over their shoulder a little bit. They've got a bit more of a gap, but certainly Dalbeattie are just going to be trying to catch Edinburgh Uni. It'll come down to those games probably between each of the teams, Edinburgh Uni and Dalbeattie, to see kind of where they end up, because Dalbeattie might be able to find a result, Edinburgh Uni might get a result, but there's just not going to be any consistency there for me, I think, in both of those teams, and it'll be a straight shootout at the bottom to see who gets relegated. Next game then, Celtic B 6, Open Goal Broomhill 2. This is a surprising result, I think, for me. We know, obviously, Celtic B are a talented side and have got great individual players within their team, but they probably haven't done as well within the season so far. Open Goal have been a side who I've talked about plenty, and it looked like they were going great guns. This is a slight blip. They've lost a couple of games now, but I think the thing I look at Broomhill a lot, and there's a lot of focus on the style of play for them, and it seems like maybe that kind of willingness to play a certain way, which is great if you want to be playing, have your own identity and all this kind of stuff. But if that's going to lose you goals in the manner I probably did yesterday, from what I've heard, I don't know that Open Goal Broomhill will have the pace. They're going to continue to stick that way. I think it's important to be able to change things and go and try and find a different way to play when you're up against a good side like the likes of Rangers B, maybe East Kilbride, Rangers B as well, are teams that are going to punish teams like Open Goal who play in that style. So a disappointing afternoon by all means for Open Goal. Celtic B will just be glad to get a good result on the board, and they'll be looking up the table given they've got a few games in hand. They're still sitting kind of mid-table just now, but certainly from their perspective, there's no way that they're not going to be near the top come the end of the season given the games in hand.
Yeah, Rangers B and Celtic B have always been close. I think I had them as third and fourth maybe at the start of the season, but probably a wee bit higher now. So, but yeah, I mean, they have a lot of games in hand, and they're certainly a good team. I think you're spot on with what you say. I think Si has a way of playing. The issue with the press, I think they were missing a few players. They are missing a few PCs, obviously injuries and whatnot, but you can't press a young team like Celtic. There's no way. They're younger boys. They're fitter than you. They're probably faster than you. It might work for the first half, but then they're going to beat you every time. And I don't care if it's nothing really to do with experience. It's just a matter dead ball running towards it. The Celtic B boys are probably going to beat most teams, and you see the same. I mean, it's always the same. East Kilbride a few years ago always felt that they struggled with the likes of the younger teams, i.e. Stirling Uni, because of the pace of some of the younger lads. So yeah, the press works. I mean, I love pressing football, and I like how Si sort of sets up his team, but you do have to sort of take it game by game sometimes, because it's not always the same tactic or same game plan is not always going to always work. And in fairness to Si, I think a lot of people forget that it is his first foray in management, so yeah, he will learn things as well along the way, similar to more likely his younger players and how they want to do in phases and stuff like that. But they've been absolutely hammered by Celtic B, and it's Celtic B are a class team in my opinion. They didn't really play a lot of league games last month, which I suppose that goes into another conversation, since Stirling Uni played about 1 million, and then there was some teams. I think Ken Beef hadn't played, since what was it, early October or something, until the last. So yeah, there's things going on with the fixtures, obviously, and that's why we have Celtic B 2 or 3 games behind as well. So obviously cup games don't help as well, but yeah, it is a bit of a shocker though, just in terms of the scoreline. Broomhill are going through a wee bit of a phase, I think, similar to East Kilbride. It's how they react though. You need a reaction to these games. I used to have full faith in East Kilbride and Broomhill reacting, but don't know, I'm getting a wee bit wary now, I suppose, Ben.
Yeah, I think the thing about Broomhill is they're obviously on a great run for so long. I think they were about 10 games unbeaten from that game. I think they lost. They lost to Glenrothes in the cup, in the South Challenge Cup, and then they went on about an 8, 9 game, 10 game win streak effectively, and that came up against Bucky, and they won that game. Obviously, I think the thing for me that stands out with Broomhill, because of the content bit, you're seeing a lot right into the dressing room in a lot of situations, and hearing directly from the manager and the players and the coaches and all that. And that's great from a content perspective, but you're finding out an awful lot. And I think is there maybe that issue of, I think there was a lot of talk around the going to Bucky and having the weekend away and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know, it just seems like there's been a bit of a hangover from that game, that result. Obviously getting in the next round of the Scottish Cup, they've got Alloa in the next round of the Scottish Cup, but since then they've not got a win. They got beat off East Stirlingshire. They drew with Gretna, and a heavy defeat again off Celtic B on Saturday. I feel like sometimes that the content bit can be a bit of a distraction when they're not doing well. So I don't know if there's maybe a way they can maybe dial it down a little bit. I understand they've obviously got maybe some commitments and got to try and do the content to make the money and all that, because I totally understand that. But maybe sometimes I just think to myself, is it maybe a time to maybe dial it down and just rein it in and just kind of maybe try and get back to that winning ways and get on with the football? Because I just think you see maybe too much sometimes, and that'd be my worry. I think that's maybe having an effect, because obviously, I don't know, you see a lot of comments online about them when they do poorly, but you don't see an awful lot when they win. I think there's a lot of that kind of divisive attitude of fans are looking forward to gloat in the bad results, but they're not there when there's a positive results. And we obviously, as a podcast, we'll focus on positives and the negatives. We've given them plenty of credit over the course of the season. But for me, I just think maybe is that having an effect as the season goes on. Then you mentioned the squad there as well. They've obviously got a few injury problems and maybe suspensions coming in. Do they need to maybe try and add to the squad? They must have the budget there to do that. I would expect. They're not a team like a Gretna or maybe a Cowdenbeath or a Bowness who will struggle to, or even like East Stirlingshire, who will struggle to add players to their team, and they could maybe go out and get some decent players from, whether that's the West or the East, or not too sure of players in the South, or even our Lowland League teams, and pick up some players to maybe bolster the squad and give them a bit more depth, because I think that seems to be the problem. And I think Alan Cook got injured on Saturday. Kirk Broadfoot's missing for Trinent on Saturday, on Tuesday coming, and they're going to have inexperienced guys at the back. And I don't know, it's maybe a case of maybe going out and try to get some players and just try and bolster that squad. I know it seems to me there's an importance to that togetherness and the squad being one and being all mates and a good dressing room, and maybe bringing in a body might disrupt that. But I think you've got to make sure you've got the bodies in the room if you've got guys that are injured, because they've obviously got guys in at the start of the season who haven't played a game. Kieran Gibbons has came in at the start of the season. He's, I think, out from an operation at some point and hasn't kicked a ball for Broomhill, and those guys like that they probably could do who they probably had in their plans at the start of the season and haven't even played. So is it maybe a case of to go out and get players in?
I think fundamentally there's a few issues. Obviously, they've had so many sending offs throughout the season that doesn't help. I think there's an issue of overexposing yourself in terms of actual tactics and how you want to play. I mean, this is where I'm probably a wee bit of a hypocrite, because I do not blame Gary Jordan, guys like Gary, that kind of doesn't want to reveal too much about his team and how they play. I mean, if I was in their shoes, I would, if people like me were asking about a certain player, that I would be telling them nothing. So that's where I'm a wee bit of a hypocrite. But yeah, I mean, overexposure and stuff like that. If you are good and you play your game, it doesn't matter really, because you'll beat teams. The issue with Broomhill in the last few games is they've not been playing well. That's fundamentally, they do have the players there. I'm sure they brought in, I think, Martin Rennie on loan. He was on loan at Berwick earlier in the season. So they're I think they're thinking about that. They just have to play better. It's similar to East Kilbride. I mean, I don't know what it is. Sometimes you see teams that are obviously good enough, brimming with quality, but they can't pull it off. I don't know if it's a game plan thing, a management thing, and sometimes it's even a confidence thing. I think there's some teams just are lacking confidence, and especially when you get in these wee spells, you have to get over quickly. I think Si said in the last documentary, you don't want to lose 3 in a row, and that is pretty much a thing. If you start losing 3 in a row, that's when the heads drop, and are we ever going to get a win again? You don't want self-doubts when you're playing football. You want confidence. And this is why we're seeing other teams, i.e. Trinent, Spartan, Civil, they're taking advantage. And in fairness, they don't have the same pressure as Broomhill, as East Kilbride, because people expect them to win. Whereas Spartans, probably more so than Trinent and Civil, have a quality side, and obviously they have the experience of being top of the league and champions of the Lone League. But it does feel like they're probably taking advantage of the fact that no one's really expecting them to win their league this season, apart from maybe some of their fans. But and obviously we talk about Broomhill. You've said about there's probably a wee bit more pressure in terms of getting goaded by your opposition or whatever, people that don't like you on Twitter every time you lose. So a lot of negativity that you have to get over, and I kind of feel sorry for Si in a sense because of that. But look, it's football. Everyone knows what it's like. You have to get over it. You have to prove people wrong. So it's going to be tough for them, I think, especially they're coming onto a game against Trinent, who are bang on form. We'll probably get into their game at some point, but it's not going to get any easier in this league for Broomhill.
Yeah, I think the only positive you can probably get from that result on Saturday is that you can bounce back on Tuesday night against a Trinent side who are doing pretty well in the Lone League, and you don't have too long. Is there maybe that there's been a lot of a few midweek games, I think, as well for Broomhill in the last couple of weeks. I think I noticed that as well. That is there maybe that issue there where they've been playing Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday for the last week and a half, and is there maybe a lot of emphasis on the training? Maybe, I don't know, it seems like listening to obviously the content side of it, that there's a lot of maybe a need for Si to really coach them and make sure that the players understand the game plan 100%. If they're not being able to train maybe as much, I don't know if I'm just looking for excuses for them, but it just seems maybe that from listening to what they're saying, and I think he's talked about them having the belief in themselves, and rather than him drumming that into him, because I think I've seen him, I think, on another podcast fairly recently, and he talked about that, how the likes of Paolo Di Canio and Tommy Burns were really great motivators for him and made him think he could play. And is it maybe that the players have got a bit of that in them, where there's an over reliance on Si and the training ground and doing a lot of the preparation work, and not being able to do that in the last kind of probably couple of weeks, because they're playing Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, the last 3 games. They're probably only training maybe on a Monday, and they're probably maybe doing something fairly light in terms of fitness and a bit of shape to prepare for the game on the Wednesday. So I don't know maybe if that's having an effect, whereas before we're maybe playing mainly Saturday to Saturday, and it kind of maybe gave them a bit more of a kind of chance to prepare properly the way they want to. And I guess it depends what the players are doing as well off the park. I think that's key, and I think I've talked about that elsewhere in recent weeks. It's important that the players are doing the things off the park, and I don't know enough about the squad, but I'd imagine they're professional enough that they are. But I'm sure they'll be able to bounce back. I don't think that they're one of these sides that you're going to say, "Oh, that's them out of it," because they've had a couple of bad results. I think they'll come back. You see, you've got Trinent in the follow up. I think they'll be in the South Challenge Cup. I think they're out of the South Challenge Cup. Sorry, apologies. I think they got beat. Obviously, for Glenrothes, they won't be in that. So I think they've got a free week, and then they follow up to play Alloa in the Scottish Cup third round, which will be a great game for them, and it'll be a good test to see where they're at as a whole squad. So yeah, it'll be interesting to keep an eye on. I'm sure, as I say, we'll have plenty to talk about when it comes to them. On Celtic B, just briefly, decent result. They'll be delighted to get that on the board, and I think they have to go and kick on. I think that's important for Celtic B. The Rangers B have come out of the traps flying, have been pretty consistent. Celtic B will be using Rangers B as the yardstick in this league. They won't be using anyone else in the league as a yardstick for where they're at, and they'll need to go and kick on there and try and build a few results and climb that table and get the points on the board.
Yeah, I touched on the scheduling there, but it is kind of largely unfair that some teams, I always go back to Stirling, the amount of games they played, plus the Bucks, plus being in the Scottish and South Challenge Cup. I mean, and then you've got, as I say, teams that only played 2 or 3 league games last month. So I think the scheduling is difficult, obviously, with 19 teams in the league, but it's not fair, in my opinion, the fact that some teams are playing Saturday to Wednesday and then other teams have like 2 weeks off. It makes no sense to me. It could be done better, I think.
I think that's the thing. I think the way the cups are obviously scheduled, it doesn't help anyone really.
No.
I think we've seen it as well. Like from a Cointon perspective, our last league game was against Pollock on the 8th of October. And we play Talbot Wednesday night. It's a league game, and that's our next league game. It's a month apart. So we've had South Challenge Cup, Scottish Cup. We've had West of Scotland Cup as well. So it's no different across the board. And yeah, I think there could be better plan around that to give teams a chance of getting a bit of consistency in the board in the league. But I guess the games will come eventually, so everyone's going to play the same games at the end of the season. So I don't know, it might help some teams because you're not having to focus on the league games every week, and you can, obviously getting put out of cups sore, but you probably want to look at your league form as being the best form you've got. And if you're not playing it, it might be a positive for some teams, but obviously it might be a hindrance for others. So yeah, it could be better, but we'll keep an eye on things. Next one then, Cowdenbeath 1, Cumbernauld Colts 0. Cowdenbeath starting to get some results in the board, Chris.
Yeah, to be fair, I heard it was a drab game, quite dross. The conditions don't help at Central Park, obviously when it's been raining and stuff. It's a bigger pitch. I think Colts played well from what I've heard. So I was actually going to go to that game, but I ended up doing something else. Didn't fancy the weather, to be honest. See, I said about Mozza being a part-timer. I'm turning into a wee bit of a part-timer, mainly because of the trains, to be fair. But I probably will see Kenbeef on Tuesday when Bowness come calling. So hopefully I'll get to that one. But Kenbeef, from what I've seen, so I think they look. We kind of touched on it in the last pod, I think, but they look more organised. I listened to Maurice Ross's interview after the game yesterday, and he actually said we played worse and got the win, and then we play for the likes of Berwick game, he thought they played better but lost. So it's a bit of a strange one when that happens. But he'll be delighted with a win there, especially if it's tough conditions. Younger players, obviously, I mentioned that I've often thought younger players need to step up in the likes of Cowdenbeath. It seems like they're doing okay. Colts, a bit worrying for them. Another tough loss, especially against a team that's kind of close beside you. They've been unlucky. I keep saying it, they've been unlucky against the sort of bigger teams, but I mean, I think they need to start picking up as well. Colts are always a funny one for me because I always feel like they should be doing better, but sometimes circumstances. But look, it's football. Every team has injuries or every team has suspensions. Every team loses a dodgy goal or whatever it would be. Is up to the players to pick up. And I did hear they played well or as well as they could have, but they need to. Guys like Ewan McPherson, you look to him and think, well, he's just back from injury, but he's such a key player for them. He'll get goals for them. They should be doing better, Colts, and I do hope they pick up because I looked at that one and probably at the start of the season I would have said Colts would have beat Cowdenbeath, but now it's kind of like so. You know what I mean? And this is what's my opinion's changing based on results. So where I thought I had a wee bit of confidence in teams, now I'm kind of looking like maybe they're not going to be that. They're not going to get that result, and I think that can end up being the feelings of the players, the fans, whoever else. Because I guess it's a mentality thing,
Yeah, I guess from like Cowdenbeath's perspective, I think we've talked about the transition and all that kind of stuff, and obviously coming down from League Two, we were looking at them and thinking to ourselves, that's a team in free fall and potentially could get relegated. But it's a transition, a kind of rebalance, whatever you want to call it, from the League Two into the Lowland League. It's a totally new league with different teams that I've never seen before, and they're probably coming out the other side of that transition, and they'll maybe be able to stabilise themselves in the Lowland League this season. I don't think now they're going to get relegated. I was probably one of those people that said that they could potentially be one of the teams that go down if Derby had maybe picked up some results, but they've got the wins on the board, and I think even looking at it now, they're on 17 points. They're probably far enough out of that to not to worry about relegation. And I guess as well, they can build on it from there, try and finish as high as possible with the squad they've got, bring some new guys in next summer, and try and see if they can have a go and try and get back into the League Two or to the playoff and see where they can get. But they'll be happy. I think Cowdenbeath, given where they were at their first 4 or 5 games of the season, they were in a bad place, but coming out the other side for that, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's a part of the gelling process, obviously. In fairness to them, it was a new team. We're actually seeing a far more organised side from what I've seen at Cowdenbeath. So, yeah, full credit to the manager. I think, how long do you give a team to gel? I think we've had that discussion before. Is it a month, 2 months, 3 months? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter as long as the results come, and we're seeing results for Cowdenbeath now. So, fair play to them.
No, I think so. I think that's it. I think they've got there. The gelling process is probably one of those things that there's no real way to quantify it, but you can normally see that point in time where something clicks with the players and the squad, and they can go in that run up. We've had that ourselves at Conan where we brought in 15 new players at the start of the season, and first couple of games we weren't brilliant, but when you look at us now, we look great, and we're plenty of depth, and the squad's pretty healthy, and we're getting on. So yeah, I think from that perspective, it's great for Cowdenbeath that are there, but Cumbernauld Colts disappointed, but again, a team that are probably going to be well safe and not have to worry about too much about going down. But I always wonder with Cumbernauld Colts is, what kind of team really are they? I never see them as a team that are going to challenge. I never see them as a team that's going to get relegated. They're just kind of there in the Lowland League. I don't mean that in a bad way, but without that investment that you're seeing from the likes of like Open Goal, that I don't know where they go. I find it they're a team very much in the middle, and they will always be that kind of team.
historically, Colts were always in the sort of upper tier until obviously we got your likes of Kelty and your Bonnie Riggs in. But yeah, pretty much a sort of middle of the road team. I think we had a wee chat about finances with Jonathan on Twitter earlier, or certainly I did. And Colts they're not a team with loads of finances. They're a community club. I know a lot of people don't like that, but I think I often either overestimate Colts or certainly I always feel like they should be doing better. But it's maybe because I do like what they do. I've maybe got a wee bias in that. But they've got players. They've got really good players. It's just again, we probably have to be a wee bit fair on David Proctor. It's his first time in management as well. Obviously, James Orr and Craig McKinley were at Colts for years, the whole time they were in the Lone League as managers. So there has to be a wee bit of a change in the guard, how things are done. Obviously, Stuart McKenzie, the chairman, stepped down as well, obviously, over the Broomhill coming to Broadwood situation. So, yeah, I guess it's hard to put a finger on, like you say. I think what type of team are they? At the moment, probably a mid-table team, probably going lower now, based on results. So, yeah, I mean, I love Cumbernauld Colts. I really do. I think they're a great team. A great club, I should say. They do have good players, but yeah, the problem with they have is the fact these sort of middle of the run teams in the Lone League, they'll always go lower down the leagues when you're getting your former East Juniors, former West Juniors coming into the Lone League because they just can't compete in terms of most things, in terms of finances or not so much facilities, obviously, at Broadwood, but or a fan base as well. I guess, obviously, Trinent, for example, like they had loads of fans at Rangers B. It's hard to compete when you're up against these former junior sides that obviously have a fair bit of history and backing, whatever else you can sort of quantify that on.
Edinburgh Uni 0, Heart and Lothian B 9. Hearts B, a team that I think I talked about a couple of weeks ago and said, what's the point of them being in the Lowland League? I don't really see the benefits. They can tell me better if they're getting benefits, but in terms of the result, 9-0 for any team is a great result. Edinburgh Uni, we mentioned earlier, are absolutely toiling and kind of heading really towards that bottom and a slippery slope. I think all it's going to take is for Dalbeattie to turn it round, and Edinburgh Uni are going to be in massive danger in terms of relegation. It's just 3 points between the two sides at the moment. Hearts B will be delighted to get 9. But again, a team they're not going to challenge, not going to be getting relegated per se, because they can get relegated. I don't think you can clarify that bit for me for sure. But yeah, I mean, 9 goals, brilliant, but not much more to report really, Chris.
No, McLaughlin at Hearts is doing really well. I like the look of that boy. So, but Edinburgh Uni struggling. I think they're missing a few key players. A lot of the seniors, or I would say, they're better players left left this season. So to other clubs. But it's Hearts. I would say it's 2 struggling teams, despite Hearts beating Edinburgh Uni 9-0. It's a tough one, isn't it? I don't really know what to say about Edinburgh Uni. They're going through a really tough spell. I guess I'll probably take one out of your book and say they're lucky that they'll be here there at the moment. Hearts B, again, it's 9-0, but can they do it against the other 18 teams? The other 18 teams, apart from maybe Dalbeattie, I guess, but I don't think so. They're not going to be getting them high results against a Trinent or a Bo'ness or a Cumbernauld Colts, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they're obviously here to experience the Lowland League, and we'll probably find out later on in the season whether or not they'll be around for future Lowland League seasons. For me, I don't see it as much of a.
I've heard no.
You've heard no. There we go. There's a interesting rumour.
I've heard no for the B teams next season, but I mean, come on, it was March this year that we found out. Oh, actually, Rangers and Celtic would like to be in the league again. So, it's probably something we should touch on maybe a wee bit, Ben, considering it's probably.
Let's finish the league and then we'll come back to
because we did have some chat, obviously, during our...
Yeah. There's a few topics I think we've discussed, we've kind of mentioned on Twitter and stuff like that over the course of the last couple of weeks that probably deserve a bit more chat. So we'll quickly go back over a couple more games. We had Gretna 0, Spartans 3. Gretna, after having that kind of turnaround in fortune in terms of results, seemed to be back struggling. I think that game against Drumchapel in the Scottish Cup has left a bit of a scar, I think, on them. They've struggled, albeit they got a result off against Broomhill, a draw on Wednesday, but lost heavily to Drumchapel, lost heavily to Bo'ness, another kind of defeat again to Spartans. They'll be disappointed. Spartans, on the other hand, another team going about their business fairly quietly. They're not they're climbing the table. They're not far off. In fact, they're second in the league. They're only a point behind Rangers B, and Rangers B also got a game in hand, but both teams still to play each other. So it's not over for anyone by all means. I'm saying that, but I'll be probably quite hypocritical in a few games time when we talk about Rangers B. But I don't know what's happening with Gretna. I think we've seen some stuff online in the last kind of couple of weeks, Chris, about the manager and the bit of a kind of drama involving the Athletic, was it? The online the online sports news website, and there's a bit of kind of microscope being put on the manager based on his past alleged, I'll say, business arrangements. I think is probably the best way to describe it. Don't want to get myself in trouble here, probably. But I wonder if that's distracting maybe the manager and the board and maybe the players, because there's a bit of that's kind of went on, and there's those suggestions of kind of legal teams getting involved because of stuff that was said about the manager and the fact that the Athletic came to do an interview and they'd been banned from the ground and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know. I wonder if there's maybe a bit of a distraction there, and maybe they're struggling a little bit.
The way it was portrayed, I think, was really unfair on Michael McIndoe, simply because it was almost like he's trying to hide all this stuff and whatever. But if you just Google his name, you can find out he's done interviews about it. He's wrote his autobiography. So I don't know what I'll actually take Gretna's side to an extent, because it was, I mean, to judge someone on their past from things that happened years ago, and to be fair, he never got charged with anything either. So in terms of, it was all financial, nothing more extreme for people that don't know. But I mean, you can Google this sort of thing and find out about it. It's not like he's, in my opinion, hiding anything. And in fairness, he doesn't want to do interviews, which is, I mean, it might not have anything to do with this. We don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to do interviews. I'm assuming it might have something to do with this, but will we judge him on something that happened years ago? I don't think so. I mean, it's not for us to say. We're only discussing it because obviously it was a big story. But to me, it's a non-story. Again, you could Google these things and find out this and that. The only bad thing I think about it is that you're right. It's probably been a distraction to Michael and Gretna. All the journalist has done is distracted Gretna's last few weeks, I guess. I didn't take anything away from that, and Michael, he's a terrible person and all that, because it's happened years ago, you know what I mean? And again, he was, I kind of can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm taking the side of Alex Thompson, the chairman of Gretna, by saying, you know, at least there's nothing there. He was never charged with anything, or you know what I mean? Every time I use words like charged, I'm a bit, I don't want to overemphasize it because it does sound like horrific when you're saying about that in a different context, obviously. But it's probably has been a distraction. But in fairness, in terms of the game, I think I heard Gretna played well. They were good at passing. They outplayed in terms of keeping possession and that. Spartans at times, I heard, but Spartans just to go back to them, I was probably a wee bit unfair on them a few weeks ago when I said I didn't see them doing anything, because certainly they have been playing well. Blair Carswell, who's had injury issues the last few seasons, has shown that he's, again, one of the best keepers in the league. Their defensive record is brilliant. I think Blair had I think in the last few games, he's had maybe as many as 5 clean sheets from what I can remember. So the biggest thing for me was their midfield, and it always has been. But now you've got Kieran Watson on loan from Edinburgh City, who got man of the match against Gretna. You've got Bradley White. Bradley White's an interesting one because to me he was always a sort of wide player. He's been converted to that sort of attacking mid because obviously you've got Jamie Dishington and Cammy Russell. They're ultimately the wide players for Spartans. So, and I actually thought, sorry, just to touch on Trinent, because one transfer that did catch the eye was Jamie Docherty, who's obviously a winger, one of the Trinent's best players, moving to East Kilbride. And I did hear, obviously, that Colin Nish does not play sort of wingers or whatever. And I thought to myself, I would say Jamie's versatile enough that he could do a similar job to what Bradley White's doing at Spartans. So it was odd. It was odd to sell your best player to your league rivals, but then again, I can't really judge it too harshly because Trinent are doing all right again. So maybe he's right. Maybe what Dano. But yeah. I'm thinking to myself, Ben. Again, it goes back to we're probably a lot of teams have proved me wrong over the last few weeks, but it's not whether they can prove me wrong over the last few weeks. It's whether they can prove me wrong over the course of a season. There's still a long way to go. And again, it's similar with Strollers, with Spartans. Can they keep it up? I'm not sure, but I hope they do, obviously, because I do have my connections there. So, and I look forward to being back at Ainsley Park and seeing them soon.
Just picking up a point about the manager, the bit that I don't understand about it all is but as far as I understand it, he was cleared of all wrongdoing.
Yeah.
That's absolutely fine. But I don't understand why you wouldn't want to then talk about the club and the player and the players and things like that in your job now, and like try and maybe take a positive spin on what you're doing now. Because the more I think, my understanding from the situation that occurred a few weeks back is that they didn't want to talk to the Athletic, which is fine. You can object to talking to whatever media like you don't want to do, but I think if you're in a situation like Michael McIndoe was, where he was probably seen quite negatively in the press, I think you maybe want to go out there and maybe portray yourself in a better light if that's what happened. And I don't see why he wouldn't do that, and that concerns me a little bit. I don't understand that too much. If it was me, and certainly if I put my club hat on for a second, and my manager was sitting with that kind of kind of bit of a shadow over him, if you like, I'd be like, go out there and talk about it and have and try and be positive about you as a manager and what you can do for the club and what your aspirations are and where you see the club going. And you don't have to talk about the situation or what happened before. If you don't want to, that's absolutely fine. But go and play the game and discuss the club now and say, I'm not talking about what happened 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was, 2017, I think it was when it happened. I don't understand that, why it wouldn't. And I don't I suppose that some people can be burnt by the media, but there's plenty of outlets out there now. And I think from my perspective, and I'm talking about my hats here, I put my podcast now back on for a second. If Michael did want to talk about it and he wanted the platform, I mean, I would absolutely open that up to him and say, come on the Catchup and have a chat and have a conversation with ourselves. If you want to talk about Gretna and what you're doing and what you want to do as a manager, I'm not going to go into great detail about what happened in 2017, as I say. Maybe just have and try and change your character and make sure people see you in a good light.
I'm going to take one out of Thomas Brown's book because you know how it is though. I mean, if he appeared on any of the Gretna videos, there will be some daft wee idiot tweeting about this guy's a or whatever it would be with the words used, whatever it is. So so I can see that point. They probably again, I mean, that's maybe where the Athletic are getting their hiding away from sort of things, I suppose, or maybe that's where they're getting that from, because otherwise, I mean, it's all out there. He's probably sick of talking about it, to be honest. But I do see your point. Like, you don't have to speak about the team, speak about the results, speak about the club. I do think it's a bit of an awkward situation, but in terms of me, it was just a non-story. It was something that happened years ago. Got the same view as kind of Gretna on that one, actually.
Next game then, we'll look at Stirling Uni 2, East Kilbride 0. Another really bad result for East Kilbride. I watched Kevin Rutkowicz's interview, post-match interview, and he opens up by apologising to the fans. So, I mean, East Kilbride must be playing pretty bad football right now to be coming out and saying that to your fans. I think you could probably look at, I would say, Cammy Elliott being missing from the team is a massive miss for East Kilbride. Cammy goals, as you refer to him sometimes. Am I right, Chris?
St. Cammy, aye. Look, they're just not playing great. It's a bit like Broomhill, isn't it? Sometimes, yeah. I heard Jamie Docherty played well, who they brought in now, I mentioned, obviously, from Trinent, but we've got to give credit to Stirling Uni. They're a good team. It's not a God-given right that East Kilbride and Broomhill are going to be beating every team. I think Kev probably did have to apologise to the fans on that one, because I am seeing comments now about, not too long for calling for his head. But look, it's still early days. I mean, if it continues, it's worrying. I always feel, and I felt since the start of the season, that East Kilbride, they're not aggressive enough. They're not an aggressive team. You see a lot of their goals, as I say, always come from that 18-yard line, plenty of space. I mean, why are you not putting tackles in? Why I'm not expecting you to be booting teams off the park, but you have to have a wee bit of aggression about you I think one of the Cammy McKinley's goals, and everyone just let him through to score. So there's things at East Kilbride that I would change. Not that I'm an all-knowing genius that I know more about his team than Kevin Rutkowic and Bill Orr, but just from an outsider's perspective, I think you need to get a wee bit more aggressive and stop teams. Not expecting them not to do anything just because you're East Kilbride and they're Stirling Uni. And I guess I would have one comment on Stirling Uni, in fact a few comments on Stirling Uni, because I noticed they were called a Diddy team. I guess that was in a reply to East Kilbride getting beaten to them. But Cammy McKinley, look, he missed, I think, all of last season for injury, and now he's came back into the first team at Stirling Uni and he's doing fantastic. He's almost like a new signing, because I think he signed with Stirling Uni in 2020. I don't think he might have played, obviously, with COVID anyway, but so it's good to see him back after a lengthy injury and now a part of the first team, and he seems to be doing well like the other lads. Stirling Uni can hurt you, we know that. They're good on the counter, they're technically brilliant. Again, I don't want to, I put 3 Stirling Uni players in the team of the month, so I do rate them. I said by this rate, I think the whole Stirling Uni team plus maybe their reserves or whatever will be in the team of the month by the end of the season. So look, we praise Stirling Uni enough. I don't want to give Chris or his lads too much of a big head, but it's a fantastic result. East Kilbride, they're missing Cammy Elliott in terms of their goal scoring, but they've got players there that should be doing better. I mean, one player does not make a team, as the old saying goes. They've got guys there that should be getting goals and should be making tackles, and I don't know what it is with East Kilbride and Broomhill at the moment. They're just not playing well. Probably confidence. I need to get back to winning ways and start getting a wee bit. I guess mental strength about you, as well as obviously physical as well, is important in football.
Yeah, I think the more it goes on for East Kilbride, the more worrying it gets, because obviously we started talking about the season, how East Kilbride the last couple of seasons have struggled to start well, and kind of maybe come on to a game in the later half of the season, we're starting to see it go in the reverse. They had a great start to the season, and they're starting to struggle a little bit. But the more that goes on, the more difficult that gets. They're 5 points behind Spartans just now. We probably take Rangers B out of the equation. For me, I guess it's like 6 points behind. But I think the important bit for the non-Colt teams is to finish the best of the non-Colt teams and make sure you get into that playoff as the champion club. So catching Spartans will be the main target, I think, for East Kilbride, but they need to turn around quickly or else they're going to get left behind. I think that's the concerning thing. Same for Broomhill. I think if they don't start to pick up the results after that kind of the blips that they've had in the league, it's three games now without a victory for East Kilbride. I don't know where Cammy is at in terms of fitness, where he's going to be back to help them, because I think he is, as I said earlier, a important part of that team and a good focal point to get the goals. But yeah, I don't know where they go, and it just seems like they're coming to that sticky spell. Obviously, in history, East Kilbride have been a team where they're very reactive in terms of bagging the manager when things aren't going well. So I think the worst it gets for Kevin Rukovic, I think you're looking at the East Kilbride board and saying what they're going to do. They might end up bagging the manager after maybe 25 games or something like that and leave them kind of going back to square one. Whereas I think they need some stability, and I think it'll be interesting to see what happens there. We've seen it with Stevie Aiken and Chris Aiken, for example, and Stuart Malcolm before that, where they were kind of chopping and changing managers, but they can't keep doing that as a club. No. So I think they need to hopefully for Kevin Rukovic and Bill, they'll get back to winning ways on Tuesday against Gretna, much as to the disappointment of the Gretna fans that listen to this podcast. But they need to get going, East Kilbride, because if they want to get in that playoff, then there's no two ways about it. They need to get those wins back on the board and try and catch up with the likes of Spartans and Rangers B.
I think if I was Kev at that in this moment, I would do everything I could just to get a reaction from these guys. I would cry, I would shout, I would swear, I would laugh, I would fucking sing, I'd get my guitar out. I don't know what.
Get the guitar out. I love that.
They need just a reaction. They need to get going. There's so many. They're not playing great, and it is. We know the quality of these teams. We've been fucking talking about since the start of the season. But you just need that something about you. You need to get yourself livened up, or as you say, it could be curtains. Like
maybe I just need to get the guitar out, run a campfire, bit of songs to team bonding night around the campfire. Maybe you need to do that, Kev, if you're listening or watching. Get yourself a wee session on the guitar with the boys and cut up beers and kind of get the bit of cohesion in the team, and maybe that'll be the turnaround. And if you do that and it works, we want to take full credit for that idea. Next game, then, the final game in the lower league is Trinent Juniors 2, Rangers B 2. I think for me, a surprising result. We've talked about Rangers B to death on this podcast, and we know they're a good result, a good team, and they're going to, for me, win the league 100%. I'm convinced about that just now. What I've seen of Trinent, obviously, in the Scottish Cup, didn't see too much. Don't get me wrong, that was Colin Nish's second game in charge, and they've also came onto a bit of form. But Rangers B going to be massively disappointed to drop points, albeit they came from behind to get a point.
I thought Trinent were the better team looking at the highlights, to be honest. And I listened to David McCallum's post-match. Felt, do we talk about referees? I mean, I got a wee bit of stick by saying focal point, not even anything bad about referees. And people are like, why are you witch hunting referees? And I'm like, I'm not. I think it's got to a point where almost guys like us can't talk about referees because people almost see it like we're outing them or something like that. Like, it's like, surely if you're talking about the decisions of referees without, obviously I know they get abuse and all that sort of stuff, so do footballers and managers, by the way. I know a lot of people don't think that's the case in terms of the same as a ref, but you just look at Twitter, of course it is. But yeah, if we're talking about decisions of referees without the abuse and whatnot, kind of logically, surely that makes them better referees. I mean, not to have a discussion about referees entirely is just farcical, in my opinion. Yeah, in this game in particular, that's one game out of however many we've talked about. We're talking about a referee. So no witch hunt against referees. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there was a lot of decisions I thought were quite bad. Trinent scored a goal, got chopped off. Still couldn't really see how it got chopped off. Obviously, there's a foul, I believe, on the Trinent player just before Rangers go up and equalise. The red card, obviously, for Oban Anderson. See, to me, that's 50-50 because he's it's a tackle, it's a slight tackle from behind. We know that they're kind of frowned upon, despite where it is on the pitch or whatever. But to me, it was soft. And then, Rangers, the excitement, they got a penalty in the 90th minute or certainly into extra time. Zach Lovelace steps up for his hat trick, and then obviously Kelby Mason, who we've talked about previously, saves it. So a lot of drama in that game. The penalty for me was, again, a wee bit soft, but it was kind of further in the distance on the highlights. So, but yeah, by all accounts, a good game. But has the ref been the focal point of that game? Absolutely, in my opinion, because I actually, not only would I say the ref has probably potentially cost Trinent 3 points, but certainly almost cost them. They've almost went away with none because of the decisions there. So, it's tough. Look, we're not here to talk about referees, but in my opinion, I think it is becoming more and more common where we are discussing certainly individual decisions. But again, you've got to look at overall that it's maybe one or two games out of 20 that we talk about. So it's not just, if we're talking about refs, don't think it's a witch hunt. We're not absolutely out in refs in every game and saying, that was a terrible decision. He should be ashamed and stuff like that or whatever. I think that's what was weird with that poll, because I don't feel like I've said anything negative, so it was a bit strange. You know what I mean? For me, I'm like, well, I'm not. You're the one that's looking at like a negative thing. I'm just saying, do referees influence games? Do you think referees influence games at a time? And of course they do. But I think in some instances, referees are actually pretty good, because you get referees that let games flow, and actually, because of the ref, it's a good game. In some instances, so it's not always negative. Referees and other times are obviously sometimes have no effect on a game because you don't think, that was a terrible decision. I think it's tough to be a referee, but I think with a referee and that job that they do, people are going to remember the one mistake rather than the 10 that they got right. So there's no witch hunt against referees. I don't know where this came from. Probably that poll, but again, it wasn't a negative thing, Ben.
I think you're right. I think the whole thing about the decisions, the bad decisions, or even the negative decisions, that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad decision. The ones that affect the game, whether it's an offside or it's a penalty or a red card or even a free kick. Sometimes in some situations that they could have that such effect in the match that it turns a score because of a goal. And that's probably the reason why it's so magnified, is the fact that the decision has impacted the match. I think from Trinent's perspective, they'll probably feel hard done by with the sending off, and certainly their Twitter account was pretty vocable about that, which I think is utter pish, if I'm going to be quite honest. I don't understand this, and I've said it before in podcasts. If you've got an official media outlet, there's no reason to tweet things like some performance from the boys against 12 men. That's just petty. It's
I got more abuse for asking a question than that, and that is
it's pretty garbage, and I don't see any need for that at all. Personally, from my Twitter perspective, I think we can all see that. We've seen the highlights, we've seen the decisions and things like that. We can make our own minds up, but there's no need for that kind of nonsense on Twitter. And it only gets you into trouble, I would opinion. I don't know if it's just me, and I talk about this probably plenty about levels and things like that, where I see myself as professional and going to do a good job and would never allow my personal feelings to come from the club view. I think that's
Yeah.
the important bit. Whoever's wrote that tweet has probably seen it from their own angle, but go and get your own Twitter account and do it there, or make a podcast like we have. I don't do that because there's enough podcasts out there, and podcasts are appearing all over the shop, and
Clyde Bank done it right, I think, with the sort of VAR in non-league football. They didn't really criticise the ref. They just sort of they showed the goal that got chopped off, obviously, and I think they done it in a way that wasn't kind of like accusing anyone of being, against them, sort of thing. I think you have to, like you say, you have to be careful with that. But
yeah, I mean, by all means, highlight the decisions, or highlight the mistakes in a way, but don't make little petty comments. That's unnecessary. For me, put it in your highlights if you want to share it and make that the clickbait title. Then I'm all for that in terms of, but don't make little stupid comments about like that, or for example, like, if you think it's a yellow card and it's not, it's been given as a red card, or if you think the yellow card that's been given is actually a red card, or something was definitely a handball when the referee hasn't given a handball, don't make a personal view. I think that's the key bit for me. And we could talk to death about the referees, but in the stage of VAR and the top leagues in Scottish football, and that's obviously got a lot of spectacle right now because it's.
I make a joke about it. I just think it's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. We've seen it in the Premier League in England, and we know it's going to be divisive, and it's going to take a bit of time to adjust our game as well to it. I think we've seen it, as I said, from the Premier League and how it's adapted, and I would say the Premier League in England has got a lot better when it comes to VAR.
Remember, we're playing Liverpool this afternoon, so I'll reserve judgment on that one.
The wee beating Spurs, as Chris and I are the Scottish wing of the Spurs supporters club at the moment. But I think that in Scotland it'll adapt, and that's only going to happen. I mean, from my perspective, I think I go to games obviously every week and I see different refereeing performances. I would actually love to be able to help them. I think the thing I always think about, I film a 90-minute game of football pretty much every Saturday. I personally don't. I've got my little team of little media team, as I often get slagged for having. My media team of about 5, I think we've got at the moment at Coen Rangers, and I know that some of the West of Scotland boys are heavily jealous of that and always like to slag me off. But we film the game as a club every week, and if there was a way for me to share the footage, and I'm sure the same with the other guys that do filming, certainly like in the West, and I'm sure the lower league clubs would do the same. If we can share the footage back with some sort of refereeing community and say, look, here's your 90-minute game. I'm not asking you to make a judgment on. I'm not going to tell you where you made the decisions wrong. Go back and watch your match, and come in and learn from it and become a better referee from the decisions you make, and take advice and take mentoring from experienced referees. Maybe that's the way about how we improve it, rather than moan about it all the time. I don't see the point in moaning about a referee because the game's over by that point and it's too late. So you can't change it.
I was going to say, I actually think VAR is a conspiracy because if you think about it, no one where it would have been a ref's name, of abusing ref, which obviously we don't agree with, but now it's VAR's fault. It's not a ref's fault, it's a VAR's fault. So it's actually, VAR is actually taking the abuse for refs, in my opinion, in some respects. But I guess it goes down to responsibility. I mean, I often feel refs don't have as much responsibility as, a player will get sold or, contract terminated or whatever. A manager will get sacked. Refs maybe get relegated a division or 2 down, and I know they're not professional refs, but
that's important, Chris.
Yeah, they'll be back, a championship, premiership game after 1 week or whatever. I would love to see more, not just VAR. I'd love to see some decision making, more communication of why decisions were made. But I don't think we'll ever get that because everyone seems to think everyone's out to get refs. Oh, we're only here to abuse refs and stuff like that. It's just a partly it's I can see that argument obviously, but I mean even folk blowing up at me over asking a question that wasn't even aggressive or aimed at anyone. I mean that's a defensive attitude off automatically, and you can't really talk to people that are that defensive about an issue basically.
Plenty to talk about on the referees. We could be here all day, but let's move on to another topic, Chris, that's came up probably by ourselves. I think we brought it up.
By you, no me. I'll get the blame, but
yeah, I mean, I'm happily go there. I think we've talked about Colt teams in this podcast, and we've seen where they went over the last couple of months, and obviously Rangers B are sitting pretty at the top of the table just now. There's been a lot of discussion about how the Colts teams came into the league and how the pyramid should be looked at, and we're seeing results. I think, I've talked about West is best and all that kind of stuff over the season, and we're seeing teams in the West and the East of Scotland doing well against teams in the Lowland League, and we're maybe looking at the Lowland League and saying that league's not quite right in terms of the clubs. I think we've probably talked about teams that are in the middle there in the Lowland League and kind of always just going to be that middle of the road team. And the Lowland League has that bit of imbalance where teams are at the top, have got good money, they've got support, they've got the backing, they're going to go and do probably quite well within the league. And there's teams at the other end of the table which don't have the same backing, don't have the same funds, don't have the same support. And you've got these kind of newer clubs as well who are always just kind of in the middle of the road and maybe going to struggle. So I think there's a lot, especially from my perspective, from being in Tier 6, we've always wanted to see that improvement in the Lowland League and have more teams promoted from the East to West and potentially the South as well. There was obviously the discussions with the Colt teams that come in, and part of that discussion we were expecting a pyramid review to take place as part of that, led by the SFA to allow the Colt teams in. Now, I got wind of this, I think probably a couple of weeks back, where the current situation of the pyramid review was that there was an initial meeting that took place in July of this year, and there's been no further meetings to provide updates to the leagues involved in that review. So I think the pyramid working group as it is, the teams that are the clubs, the leagues that are involved, being the South, the West, the East, the Lowland, the Highland, I think the Midland League are involved as well. And as I understand it, that pyramid review hasn't taken place since then. Now, the suggestion was the changes were going to take place for the 23-24 season, and that review seems to haven't been going anywhere. Chris, what's your general thoughts on that first, before I kind of go into a bit more detail about kind of what we've done to try and find out a bit more information?
It's to be honest, it's not surprising. I thought I have seen clubs pretty much put that as the reason for having the Colts in again. Yeah. So I mean, I thought it was really naive. To be honest, if that was, I think there's other things going on there, but that was the reason given to the supporters by some clubs, and I know that for a fact. I do think that was rather naive because I've said it many times. It's the SFA couldn't promise that, really. I mean, not with the SPFL clubs with the voting power. Sorry, I should say they could. We'll have talks about it. Yeah, they can promise that, but the actual changing of anything, they can't do anything. I mean, it's the SPFL teams that would have to vote for it, and we're in a bit of a weird limbo at the moment because League 1 and League 2 will not vote for anything like that with B teams in the Lowland League currently, but the SFA are pushing so hard to have somewhere for B teams. I've heard it's not going to be the Lowland League next season, hence we'll probably get into I don't know what you're going to say. So, but yeah, I mean, it's farcical, but it's not surprising. I mean, we've been at this a long time, Ben. We know a lot of the things we have to take with a pinch of salt now because it changes so often. I think the disappointing thing was the statement from the Lowland League that we got back.
So just on the I'll cover that now, Chris. So I think just to be clear to anyone else who's listening to this, I'm looking at this personally from a podcast perspective. I obviously have an interest as part of being involved in Quinn Rangers, a tier 6 club.
Does that mean you're going to say something controversial?
I wouldn't say so. No, I don't think so. I think for me the important bit here is that somebody is fighting the fight for the teams involved. So the Lowland League teams, the West teams, the East teams, South teams, specifically, because I think that's the one that we represent as a podcast. But the greater good of the pyramid, I think, is quite important to me. So, on finding out the information that I'd heard around the pyramid review, I reached out to the Lowland League, the SPFL, and the SFA for comment. So the questions that I essentially asked were the following: what's their understanding of the pyramid review, or the current position of the pyramid review, and what's the understanding of the roadmap of that pyramid review? So, i.e., what do they expect to happen over the course of, say, 6, 10, 9 months, whatever it is? Confirmation that each of the parties are committed to that review, and what do they hope to achieve? So I think, as I said, we reached out to the SFA, the SPFL, and the Lowland League. The SFA have failed to comment at this point in time. Very disappointing as far as I'm concerned. Not in the least bit surprising. They probably don't see this podcast as something that's really important, but there's no one else or me at the moment fighting that fight and trying to get that information. The SPFL came back and said this effectively there's no comment from them at this stage, which I think from probably their perspective, you're probably looking at it and saying, well, it's run by the SFA-led review, therefore we're not going to get involved, which is, again, disappointing from my perspective, but
not entirely passing the buck there, though. That's fair enough, I would say. But at least they got back to us. I
mean, absolutely came back. I got an email and a follow-up phone conversation with their media team, and that's got to respect that. At least they treated it seriously, and they came back with a comment. Obviously, I also contacted the Lowland League. And we got a response from the league who said the Scottish Lowland League will welcome the announcement by the Scottish FA that a review would take place, and we are fully committed to playing our part in the review. We hope to achieve some new solutions to some existing challenges, which will provide a bright future at all levels of our game. So that's the views. I say very, very disappointed the SFA. I think we got in touch with their media department. I don't see why they wouldn't respond, even to say no comment. I think would have been, but not fine, as in not a great response, but at least to give us a courtesy of a response, I think is pretty poor. I think you've got to treat everything with the respect it deserves. The Colts teams have been a divisive topic for a number of years now within the Lowland League. The pyramid is something that's coming up more and more where we see these results involving different teams within the pyramid beating other teams at a higher level of the pyramid. And I personally don't have any faith in that review actually taking place and being completed in time, like they said. Now, if there was something blocking that, whether it was personnel not being able to do it, other priorities, then fine, come out and say that. I think that's the thing for me that's missing here, is the lack of communication on it. The clubs themselves don't know what's happening with that review. The last that you heard was there was a meeting in July, the kind of initial review. That review is supposed to take 6 months. So we're talking probably by January, roughly, we should have the outcome of that review, as the clubs understand that hasn't taken place. So, yeah, very much disappointed, and I don't know where we go from here. I think there's been talk of other options. I think there's been a kind of murmurs of a Scottish Junior Football Association league at Tier 5, which will be kind of a central league to compete with the Lowland League. For me, I don't think that's the right approach. I'm not on board with that. I've also got an opinion of the Junior Association and the involvement they have, and I think they've had their chance. I think that's the thing for me is they've had their chance. They didn't join the pyramid when the opportunity was there for whatever reason. There was obviously plenty of reasons, and I think the thing for me is that it's holding back clubs that are progressive, want to be good clubs and climb the ladder. And in the Lowland League, coming on at the end for a bit, the lack of promotion and relegation to Tier 6, I think you have to lead by example. I don't understand why that's not happening. They're kind of probably going to go along the lines of, well, if we can't get into the League 2, then we're not going to open up our league. But you've got to lead by example for me. But all in all, very, very disappointing situation. And I think we'll be back here probably in 6 months' time saying the same thing, is my view.
I really wasn't as disappointed with having Hearts B or the 19 teams or the Colts teams back in the league as I was when they voted that status quo in terms of the relegation for promotion from Tier 6 to the league. I think this would not be happening. All this sort of stuff about League 3 and central leagues and all this sort of stuff would not be happening if they had one more promotion opportunity from Tier 6. I think it was that simple, but now we're hearing all this nonsense about, another Tier 5 league, and I mean, I'm really against this idea of more tiers. It's like, do we really have to have 3 or 4 leagues at the same level? It gets so messy. I think it has to be looked at. I think it will. Believe it or not, I actually do think. Let's face it, the SFA will bend over backwards for the B teams to have a league to play in. If it's not going to be the Lowland League, would they go as far to create a league for them to play in, like a new league? I'm not too sure, but one thing I keep seeing is the Lowland League getting the majority of the blame for how the pyramid is. I think that's a wee bit unfair. Certainly, I take that a lot of Lowland League teams were not just voting the B teams in for the sake of a pyramid review, but the fact that the SFA possibly said it wouldn't ever happen if this doesn't happen. So to me, that's kind of a bit of potentially a blackmail, isn't it? Really, we're never going to have a pyramid review if the Colts. So you can look at it like that as well. But yeah, it's a big mess. I'm sure we'll get back to talking about it at some point. But yeah, I was never as disappointed as I say. I think if the Lowland League had voted for more promotion from Tier 6, we probably wouldn't have had all this nonsense coming back up again, Plan Zs and Bs and whatever else it is. But yeah, it's been hypocritical. I've said it at the time, but to me it was being hypocritical. And I couldn't really care less about the Colts teams being in the league because, during the season we kind of get used to them. I think some people are still better about them being in the league. I think I had Charlie Lindsay in the team of the month, and someone said, "Oh, B team shouldn't be in there." It's like, I'm not going to punish young players for fucking being in a B team. It would be like, oh, Stirling uni players don't get to be in the team of the month because they're uni students. It's just stupid, in my opinion. So, but yeah, a lot more to talk about in the future, Ben. At the moment, the worrying thing for me is, I guess, a separate issue, but the same, I guess, is what's going to happen at the end of the season if a B team wins the Lowland League. It's been kind of made clear that, or previously it has, that the second or third or whatever member club will go up to the SPFL, but I don't know. We've heard it all before.
That's an interesting topic. It'll be interesting to see if Rangers B do win the league. And that champion club is nominated from the Lowland League to play in the playoff. Will we see some sort of legal action, perhaps, from perhaps, I don't know if it'll be from the team at Club 42, or will it be from the Highland League team involved in that playoff? But I know we've had things before where the suggestion that'll be okay, but I think it'll be interesting to see how that actually plays out if Rangers B do go on and win the league, which obviously I firmly believe that they will. I think they'll win this league by a canter in the end, and for them it'll be obviously justifiable for them to be in the League Two, because I think that's the important thing, is they've got to be good enough to be able to play in that League Two, and by winning the Lowland League, they essentially do that. From my perspective.
So do you think Rangers B might actually put it across as we should be playing in League Two? Or
well, I think you've got to do that. I think that's where the promised land is, if you like, for these Colt teams. I think it's been brought up plenty of occasions where the Colt teams want to play in the league setup. From previous votes, they haven't been able to do that, and they found a home in the Lowland League. But I think the argument the previous season, for example, was that they never won the Lowland League, so they're not good enough to play in that League Two, and maybe the Lowland League is a level. But if one of them goes and wins that league, I think they're quite right to go and chat that door and say, we're good enough to play in your league, we should be playing there.
It'll be interesting. I mean, obviously as a league, the Lowland League can declare a champion even if they finish second, third, whatever. We saw it obviously during the COVID years with Kelty. But yes, it's a bit of a mess, it really, isn't it? I'll be interested to see what happens. It's one of those ones where it's just probably going to be a drama again come the end of the season. Yeah.
Well, that's the topics of conversation. We'll move on to some of the other leagues around the levels. It's been a marathon episode already on the official catch-up. But we'll move across to the East Scotland Football League, and we'll look at the Premier Division. A couple of results there to flag in that league, which is, first one we'll look at is 4-1 victory for Linlithgow Rose against Tynecastle. I mean, Linlithgow Rose, as expected, as expected, as you said, Chris. I think they're a team that we'll look at and say it's theirs to lose in terms of the league. I know that Pennycook have got a game in hand per se, but I don't see where Linlithgow are going to drop points. I think this is going to be their moment, and they're going to be the team to challenge in that playoff. Next game, then we'll talk about Sauchie, Cup specialists in this podcast, as we always come up and talk about. But on league action on Saturday, a 5-0 win against Genefield Swifts, an absolute thumping for Genefield, a team who are sitting kind of third in the table. So they're kind of up there with Pennycook, but Sauchie, a team actually going about their business quite quietly in the league. Like we mentioned, a few other teams so far, but they'll be absolutely delighted to get 5 against a team like Genefield.
That's that was a surprising result. Obviously, Genefield's not the easiest place to go. They're one of the top East of Scotland sides, but Sauchie, I think we praised them way too much. It's getting to that point where they're up there with Linlithgow and Darvel most weeks. So Ross Kavanagh, 4 goals. We've spoken about Ross on the podcast before. Yeah. Unbelievable. No, really class result. I wouldn't be too worried about Genefield. I think Sauchie have a wee bit of momentum coming off the cup, obviously, and they seem to be doing really well, and that's a fantastic result.
In the final game we're going to talk about then, Lothian Thistle Hutchinson Vale beat Broxburn 3-1. Another surprising one, I would say, given where Hutchie Vale are at just now in the league. They're sitting in that relegation spots just above Oakley and Vale Leithen. We see Broxburn as a good outfit and good, obviously sitting mid-table just now, but a good side, and would have expected them to beat, say, Hutchie Vale, Chris.
Yeah, really, really good result there by Hutchie Vale. I mean, we've not really had much to cheer about so far this season. Hutchie Vale, I think I've on record as saying they lost a lot of good sort of key players and some guys retiring and that. But the thing about Hutchie is they always kind of build up with their youth players. So, fantastic result. Albeit, obviously, it was at home at Ainsley Park. But, Broxburn will be gutted to lose that. Just to touch on one further game, because it was the game of the week. Obviously, the Fife derby between Dundonald and Crossgates Primrose ended 1-1. There wasn't much. There was hardly anything on Twitter. I think they were having some sort of signal difficulties at your side. So yeah, I don't really know too much about it. But yeah, 1-1. Typical of a game of the week that we that might be. I choose a game like that that's 1-1 rather than a mammoth scoreline.
We'll quickly look at the South of Scotland League. The one we'll look at is G-Town 9, Wigtown Bladnoch 0. Still not a lot of games played in the South of Scotland League, but Creetown 4 wins out of 4. There's not a lot of, for me, a lot of depth in that league in terms of teams that are going to challenge. I think that's the thing I would always look at when it comes to the South of Scotland League. Abbey Vale's a team doing all right in the Scottish Cup. They're in the third round, but Freetown probably are the team that are going to do all right. And I think that's always what's going to happen in that league. There's probably one team that does well per season, and that's for this year. It's going to be Freetown, but they'll be absolutely delighted with that 9-0 victory.
Yeah, there was a few postponements as well, and obviously we do know that a certain Glasgow team is going to be moving to the south of Scotland next season. So,
okay. Didn't want to bring that one up. We'll talk about that just now. We might as well.
Swerve ball on that one. Glasgow Wellington, obviously.
As I say, we were on a mammoth episode of the podcast, but let's do that one. Let's go for that one just now. Glasgow Wellington, an amateur side from, believe it or not, Glasgow, have indicated they intend to join the South of Scotland Football League. Now, I'll be pretty fucking cutthroat on this one. I think that's absolute farce, as far as I'm concerned. I know there's an option there to join other leagues and move about leagues, but there's absolutely no reason why a Glasgow team should be playing the South Scotland Football League. Simple as that. I know Cali Braves are in there, but historically I think they were maybe involved for a much longer period. But Glasgow
they were playing at Annan as well, in fairness.
And they were playing at Annan, yeah. I thought I'd done free side, absolutely. I think Glasgow Wellington have an absolute cheek, quite frankly, to apply for the South of Scotland League. They should be joining the West of Scotland Tier 4, Tier 9, the 4th division within the West of Scotland League, and build their way up that way. I absolutely have a complete disagreement with that. I think, for me, to be honest, if they do that and they go and play in the South Challenge Cup, and essentially what they're trying to do is jump the tiers within the West of Scotland, I don't think they'll be good enough to win that playoff anyway. So that'll be the important bit for me, is that they won't be good enough. But absolute non-starter as far as I'm concerned. But I'll be keeping an eye on that one. But I can't support that at all. Doesn't matter how cool their jerseys are and stuff like that, and the things they do on social media, which I do like, but that decision is an absolute joke.
And that is why we need a pyramid review, one that actually works. Certainly, probably. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the south of Scotland. Is it still on the same level as the east of Scotland and the west now?
I mean, it's not, but yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, no disrespect to the south of Scotland. I think we've mentioned it many, many times on this podcast, but I mean, a lot of people think the south of Scotland should be joined together in the west. Whether the south teams will be in the west pyramid, I'm not 100% sure. But it's make it east-west. Well, we could have a central tier 5 next season. So, are they jumping the queue? Obviously, they are. Curtis, I like Curtis Rose, and I like Glasgow Wellington, but they said they'll come up with their reasons why they're playing in the south. It has to be a really good reason for people not to believe they're just trying to jump the queue.
I'm not going to buy any other reason unless they're honest about it. That's all I expect. Honesty. They're trying to jump the leagues, and that's fine. If they're going to be honest about it, I can respect honesty. But any other bullshit decision, excuse that comes out, I am not buying into it at all. And that's me being frank as you'll ever get on this podcast. I can be one person that can sit down the middle sometimes in some situations, but that I can't get on board with at all. Now, if they were an outlier in terms of maybe the location, the likes of Threave, I think I've obviously moved across to the west of Scotland, where teams are maybe on the border. Harthill Royal were an example of that, where they've moved across because they're on the border. I can support that, I think, for me. Or if you're a team like, for example, like Broomhill, where they were playing in Alloa, but very much see themselves as a Glasgow team and a West team, then that's fine as well. But I can't just see a team from Glasgow rocking up in the South of Scotland League. That's just not on. That's just almost as bad as Brechin saying they want to play in the Lowland League. And you know what we thought about that? That wasn't that wasn't.
We were in
cool.
uproar, weren't we? Aye, in fairness,
That's the exact same situation
Yep.
as far as I'm concerned. So let's not give that any more attention than necessary there. We'll move on to the West of Scotland. We had the West Scotland Premier League plus the West Scotland Cup taking place. We'll run through the fixtures just quickly. We'll look at Auchinleck Talbot 3, Glenafton Athletic 1, B Juniors 2, Clydebank 0, Hereford 0, Cambuslang Rangers 1, Kirkintilloch Rob Roy 0, Arthurlie 2, Largs 1, Troon 0, Petershill 1, Darvel 2, Pollock 0, Overmeadow 2. Just briefly, I think Auchinleck obviously would be happy to get another result. They beating Darvel in the Junior Cup, who's obviously helped them. They come to Buffs Park on Wednesday night, which is
picking up,
not ideal when they were obviously toiling a bit. They'll turn up at our place, but very good outfit. We'll match them. No doubt about that. Great result for Beath. I would say in terms of beating Clydebank. Clydebank had kind of turned a corner as well. They'll be delighted to get the points. Be kind of one of those teams that are going to sit. They're kind of sitting third just now, but I think the league table's a little bit false in the West of Scotland, given the lack of league games that have taken place for some teams.
Josh Fowler, man of the match as well.
Yeah, boy, Josh. Have you got posters up on your wall yet of him, or are you?
I'm not good.
Not yet.
Actually need to.
I might get some posters up because you talk about him more than you talk about, don't know, Cammy Elliott at this point in time. Not he was your boy, but I mean, Josh gets brought up in the group chat every other week when he does something exciting. Cambuslang getting a result against Hurlford. Hurlford obviously our team sitting up at the top. Again, around the falseness of the league, but Cambuslang toiling at the bottom, but picking up a result.
Meda. We want to talk about it?
Yeah, Meda. I don't really ever want to talk about Meda unless it's in a negative light, but we've got to give them a bit of credit.
Yep.
Getting a result away to Pollock at Newlandsfield. 3 wins in the bounce, I think it is now. For Meda, they'll be buzzing. I think we all saw that appointment of George Grierson and thought, what the fuck is that, really? Let's be honest. I didn't really see it as an appointment that would inspire anyone to go and do well. Maybe a little bit hasty in terms of bagging Spenny and Latta. I don't know. Was it maybe a bit of a false kind of dawn because of where they were in the league and the lack of matches in the league, perhaps? But yeah, a lot of credit that George Gearson's got rid of a few players that we've talked about. He's brought in a couple of players himself that he obviously relies on, and the likes of Louis Cairn. You get Callum Graham scoring goals for fun in that Meda team. It's probably quite fortunate, I paused it before, that Meda have Callum Graham because he's a great striker. He was, for me, good enough to be at Pollock, and I'm surprised he didn't stick around at Pollock. A bit like Jordan Moore. I don't really know what happened to those guys. Pollock seemed to buy in these strikers that were looking like good prospects, if you like, and could be good for Pollock, but didn't last for whatever reason. I don't think there was an over-reliance from Murday to give him a bit of time to fit into the team and the level, for example. I think for me, Pollock are crying out for a striker just now. I think obviously Stuart McCann's a great player, but maybe not naturally a forward in the sense of an out-and-out goal scorer. He's got, I think, 10th this season, which is brilliant, and he's picking up that mantle because there is that kind of lack of forward. Adam Ford, I think, is probably not the player he once was, and they probably could have done with a Callum Graham or a Jordan Moore who they had on their books only 6 months ago, 9 months ago, or something like that in their teams, and they didn't give those guys the time ultimately to try and make their way. They've got Dylan Dykes, who obviously unfortunately has been diagnosed with cancer, and we wish Dylan well. Because he's a great player and a player that I'd love to see in a Buffs team for me if we had the opportunity. I know we did try and get him at one point last season, but he would have been a good player. But if he's obviously going to go through it's what sounds like pretty intense cancer treatment, which means he'll probably be not at his best or not involved, certainly. I don't know what the full story is, but obviously just reiterate that point. We wish him well and hope he makes a full recovery.
Yeah, and just to know on Callum Graham, I just noticed, I think this morning, that he signed a new contract with the Meda as well. So not be going anywhere unless for a big fee, I would imagine. So smart business by Meda.
Yeah, good of them to get him tied down, I think, because I think if you're Callum Graham, you're probably looking at yourself and going like, I can make a move here to a bigger club. Meda obviously are a traditional big club in the sense of the West, but a club that maybe not at the top at the moment, and they're looking to try and get back there. But signing Callum up is a great move for them. They obviously got rid of Kieran Bubekri, who has went back to Cumbernauld United and maybe freed up some wages and allowed them to maybe throw a bit more money at Callum and give him the contract that he probably deserves, because they probably brought Bubekri in thinking he was going to be the big goal scorer, and he did not do that at all, to be as nice about it as possible in that regard. But yeah, we always talk about Darvel briefly, but they've got another win on the board. There's not much more to say. They should be beating Petershill. Probably should be beating Petershill by more than 2-1, to be quite frank, if we're going to be saying anything about them. But yeah, a good result. They're still top of the table. But the table for me just now, I think it's important to highlight, is a bit of a false dawn now with teams such as ourselves and like Auchinleck, for example, having only played 6-7 games. I mean, I look at the table from a co-winning perspective. We're only 6 points off top. We've got a game in hand on Darvel. We've got 2 games in hand on B, 3 games in hand on Hurlford. So Auchinleck in a similar boat with kind of 2 games and two games and 1 game on B than Hurlford and Rob Roy, for example. And yeah, it's certainly a false table, and it's not going to right itself till teams are in that flow of league games. We mentioned the cup earlier. There's plenty of cup games to come. We've been in cup action the week before. We had a 3-week the weekend back. We played the cup this week. We're going straight into the next round of the West Scotland Cup on Saturday, and then we play the South Challenge Cup the following week. So we don't play another league game now till we play Auchinleck on Wednesday. But we don't play another league game after that until 25th of November. So there's so much of a gap between the league games that the league table is going to look not right for a while, and I think that's important for people to remember that the table's still to get sorted out, and we'll know who's really going to challenge at the top of the West much later in the season. Apart from that, there wasn't a great deal. We mentioned briefly, I think there was the Western Scotland Cup took place as well. I won't go into too much detail about the Buffs game. Cowan Rangers beat Bells Hill 7-1 in the West Scotland Cup preliminary round, as it is. Cumnock beat Dalry Thistle 4-0, and Bember beat Greenock Juniors 4-0. For me, all results that should have happened. I think very routine professional performance by us, and not much to dwell on. What I would say is, if I'm going to say anything about our game, is got to give hats off to Bells Hill and their committee and the guys involved there, because it must be difficult to be at a club at that level. It must be so challenging to try and get money in, players, sponsorship, do the improvements to your ground and all that kind of stuff. And you really got to commend those guys that are doing that week in, week out. They've probably got quite small committees and a lot of people doing a lot of stuff. And it made me feel probably quite fortunate about where we're at in terms of Cowan Rangers and the facilities that we have and the squad we have and the budget we have for players, because these guys are doing it for the love of the game, the love of the community, the love of the club. It was the same at Glasgow Perthshire a few weeks ago for us as well in the South Challenge Cup. It's just absolutely take your hats off to these people, and as much as they struggled on the day on the park, they can be proud of their club and what they're trying to do there.
Absolutely.
Well, that's pretty much it for the official Catchup podcast. As always, you can find us on all the great channels. It's all the podcast channels. Just search for his official Catchup podcast. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter's at the official Catchup. I'm doing Chris's job for him. I've just realised.
Yeah. We're at feature film length, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, that's silly. I mean, it's probably a case of listening to this in 2 parts. If you've got to this point in the podcast, we absolutely commend you for sticking around.
Yeah, it's always the same, Ben. Bumper episodes after missing a week.
We take a week off, and there's plenty to talk about. But I'm sure we'll be back next week. There'll be a full card of games happening in the Lone League on Tuesday and Wednesday. There's some games in the West of Scotland on Wednesday. Plus, there's games obviously on the Saturday as well. So we'll be back. Thanks for listening, and until next time, have a good one. Cheers.